spell songs sort of came to me completely out of the blue. So the actual project itself came together when there's a bloke called Neil Pearson, who you've been chatting to, I think, maybe.
This podcast is about you, your journey in music, and how you got to where you are now. And we'll talk about the new Spell Songs record that you put out Friday, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
awesome.
it came out for you guys on Friday. It's been out for a little bit longer for us, but
Oh, okay, yeah, it came out here on Friday.
yeah.
And then and I saw the new video too. It's really, really cool.
Oh,
The
brilliant.
Moth.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, first off, where were you born and raised?
I was born just in Rochdale, which is a town which is just slightly northeast of Manchester,
Okay.
in England. It's sort of halfway between Manchester and Leeds, maybe a little nearer to Manchester.
Okay. And did you come? Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, there's the town of Rochdale, and then I'm from a little town nearer to that called Littleborough, which is sort of very picturesque. It's in a set of hills called the Pennines. So,
Oh, cool.
yeah.
Was it a smaller town or like how
It's a
was it
smaller town, yeah.
Okay.
It's still a town, but it's not a big place at all.
Okay, very cool. What about music? Was your family musical at all? I know obviously you've won a bunch of awards as a kid and I want to hear about that, but like how did you get into that originally?
Well, my granddad was a musician in the 60s. He used to play in dance bands in the UK. He's a jazz musician. So he played clarinet and saxophone in that sort of period. And then he suffered a collapsed lung, so he switched to piano and organ. And he was a composer and arranger and stuff as well. So there is sort of a musical bloodline, but it skipped at my parents. Neither of my parents play. Well, they play now, but they started to learn instruments after I did. So
interesting. That's cool. So you guys were all kind of learning together?
Yeah, actually. I think they maybe started a couple of years after me. So yeah.
Wow. And what about the first instrument you learned? Was it drums?
It was drums. Yeah, I learned drums at my local music service, and then moved on to piano. So I was about 7 when I started playing drums, and then piano.
What drew you to drums? Just smashing stuff?
Yeah, well, actually, initially, so I was brought up on a sheep farm. That's my parents are farmers.
Oh, wow.
And so there are always lots of things like buckets knocking around. And I used to make, when I was a kid, I used to make big drum kits out of loads of buckets. I have like a specific memory of like, my parents would put like the Queen Live at Wembley 1986 concert on.
Okay.
And I used to pretend to be Roger Taylor, smash a load of buckets. Yeah, exactly. So,
that's awesome. Yeah. I have a 5-year-old son and we put him in drum lessons recently. We got him over quarantine. We got him because he was just like so much energy. We got him an electric kit so he could smash it without, destroying the neighbors. And we just started putting him in lessons. And one of the second or third lessons he learned, We Will Rock You. That was like, it was like,
oh, great. Yeah. I've been there. That's been me at one
he's
point.
Picked up about four or five beats so far, which is pretty cool. But that's awesome. So you started at 7, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I was sort of playing on the buckets long before that.
Okay.
But I started to learn properly, like how to actually play a drum kit at 7. Yeah.
And that was through what, like you said, a music school by your house or something?
Yeah, like a local music service. So on Saturdays, the place would open up and could go and get like a half-hour lesson, and it's subsidized, or it was back in those days. So yeah, you can get, I could have fairly cheap drum lessons from a good teacher, and that's how I got into it, really. Yeah.
Wow. And you just continued playing drums? What, like I saw you won like some competition when you were young, right? In like your teenage years?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I was kind of lucky that my parents have been very supportive of me being a musician. So when I was 13, I went to Cheetham School of Music, which is a music school in Manchester. It's a specialist music school. So that instead of going to a standard high school, I went to there, which you don't have to take as many academic subjects and sort of scheduled into your days, practice time and music lessons and things like that. So I went there for high school for 5 years, which was great and really brought me on as a musician. So that's how I sort of sort of developed really as a player. Yeah.
Just through the school, just being
Through the
was it
school,
like
and then
you went in as a drummer, and that's what you can continue doing, obviously.
exactly. And everyone at the school is a musician, so it's quite a sort of I suppose growing up in that environment, it's great because it's sort of quite competitive, or it can be, when
Yeah.
there are 5 drummers in your year, you're all watching each other and spurring each other on a little bit. So I really enjoyed that environment.
Mm-hmm. Did you have to like apply to get into school?
Yeah. So it's means tested as well, but there was an audition for entry and stuff like that.
Do you
remember? I think they sort of let you in. It's more like pretend that if they see potential, so you don't have to be a virtuoso as such to get in.
Just if you look like you have some drive and you enjoy it, then
I think so. Yeah.
Did they teach you how to play with people as well? Like were you playing with a band and everything?
Yeah, they had sort of musical ensembles, so everything from like jazz trios to full orchestras, symphony orchestra. They had brass bands, they had wind bands, everything. Yeah, or if you're a string player, there'd be the standard sort of string quartet stuff and that kind of thing.
Oh, awesome. And when did you start a band?
Actually, the first band I ever played in, we were like 11. We were called Hay Fever, but spelled like Heyfeva, like Hay Fever.
Oh, I like that.
It's like maybe not the greatest name, but we were a folk band. There were just 3 of us. So yeah, that was kind of us just messing around as kids, really. And then I've sort of played in bands all the way through my teenage years. Folk bands. I was in a metal band. Played in jazz bands. It's very varied when you go to a school like that. So
sure. And then you continued your education, right? You went to college for music as well?
Yeah, I went to university for music for 4 years. So I suppose as musicians go, I'm about as institutionalized as they come, really.
Right. Was it always drums though? I just saw that you play a couple other instruments.
Yeah, so I started off playing drums, and then I played piano as well. So I started that when I was 9. And then I played accordion as well. So I learned that a little bit later on, 10 or 11, something like that. So I think due to going to that school, I was able to keep up all 3. So yeah, I still play all 3 now. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. And what was this Young Musician of the Year thing that you were a part of? How old are you when that happened?
I was 17 when that happened. So
was it through
it used to be an annual. What was that? Sorry.
Was it through the school? Like, is that how you got involved in it, or something totally different?
I mean, it's a different thing, but a lot of the people at the school entered, as you can imagine, it with it being a specialist music school. But yeah, it used to be an annual competition, which is run by the BBC, and now I think it might be every 2 years. I'm not sure. And so they have different sections. So I entered in the percussion section. And then you sort of go through these heat stages, and then at the end, there's a grand final. So there'll be a percussionist, a strings player, a woodwind player, a brass player, and a pianist. It's normally the way it works. So yeah, I got to that final when I was 17, which was crazy. It was televised and stuff. I had never really seen anything like that before at that age. So amazing experience.
What was it like going through those the heats that you have to they would teach you how to play something or tell you to play something? Like, how do you even advance? Like, what were they critiquing you on?
You'd basically you'd make a little 20-minute solo program. So yeah, just like a little mini recital or sort.
20 minutes though. You just have to play. You'd have to just come up with a whole 20-minute drum piece. Yeah, you'd play a few different pieces maybe, and it wasn't just drums. It's some sort of tuned percussion stuff as well. So like marimba, like the 4 sticks thing, or maybe something on the vibraphone. So it was quite. Yeah, it wasn't all just like a kit for 20 minutes. I don't know how much that I could listen to, really. Well, that's what I was wondering. I'm like, wow, they were some pretty. I mean, to hear. I mean, any instrument really for 20 minutes without anything else going on would be pretty. You'd have to have a lot of a long attention span, I would think.
So yeah, you would.
But you got to play on that. It was on TV. Like, what was that like?
It was amazing. I mean, in the final, every finalist plays a concerto with an orchestra. So I played like a percussion concerto. So there's lots of lots of different aspects to it. So there were 3 movements. It was half an hour long. One of the movements I played on a setup made of wooden instruments. The middle movement was a tuned percussion thing, so I played on a marimba. And then the third movement was a setup made of metal instruments. So it took me like probably 4 months to learn the piece. It's quite stressful as a
Wow.
17-year-old.
Oh yeah.
Quite a high pressure thing, but
Yeah. So they give
amazing
you
to
a bit
play
of
with them all.
time. They give you a bit of time to learn the piece. It wasn't like
Yeah.
it wasn't like that type of like American Idol competition where it's like you get, okay, you made it to the end. Now you got to play this one piece in front of the,
Well,
I
it's
don't
kind
know.
of, I mean, it sort of went that way a little bit. It was like the
Okay.
classical music equivalent of that American Idol.
Wow.
But yeah, I don't really like, I haven't watched it for years, so I don't know what the production values of it are like anymore, but
Okay.
it sort of did have that feel to it. A little
Sure.
bit. Yeah.
Did that help, get you into the Royal Northern College?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Again, that was like you audition to go to music sort of conservatoires, as we call them. So
Okay.
but I suppose, yeah, they look at your CV and things
Mhm.
upon entry as well. So,
And from there, did you like, how do you get involved with what you're doing now? I mean, you're part of this collective, right? With Spell Songs.
yeah, that's right.
And but prior to that, or like I did see that you're in other bands and you got a lot of other things going on. Like from college, what is your next move?
Well, so after uni, I think I just started freelancing in Manchester. So I would do any gig that anyone gave to me. I would just say yes to it. So again, it's really varied stuff. And I've just carried on doing that really. I initially did that maybe from the ages of like 21 to 24 in Manchester. So I would just go and gig every weekend with various different projects. And then I moved to London at 24. And so and that's where I am now. So I've just been in London this is my 7th year now.
Oh wow. Okay.
Just carried on just working professionally as a musician, and it sort of is quite a rich tapestry of things. It brings all sorts. And so yeah, playing in bands, freelancing, playing with singers, accompanying singers on piano, loads of different stuff. Yeah, very varied.
Okay, so like you can just go grab a gig. I mean, I've seen some of the artists you've played, like Janet Delvin, for example.
Exactly,
I
yeah.
interviewed her. She's awesome.
Oh, did you
Like,
interview Janet?
yeah, she's
Oh,
really
cool.
cool. Like so, for example, like somebody like her, did you play piano for her, play drums for her, and then like is that a gig that you kind of just grabbed to do what, like a tour with her, or is
Yeah,
that
well,
okay?
actually, the way I ended up playing with Janet is through I have I've run a folk band since I was like 16 called Foursquare, and
Oh,
we got a mandolin player in that band called Michael Givrin, who already played for Janet. And he texted me and said, Janet needs a keys player. Do you know anyone? And I said, what about me? Can I do it? And
yeah.
then that's how I ended up getting in. Pure nepotism.
Okay.
And then I suppose once people know you for playing with one person, then you'll start to be
Yeah.
seen to be a session player, and you'll get the call for other things if you're
Very
around
cool.
long enough. Yeah.
Yeah. And then how do you get involved with Spell Songs?
Spell songs sort of came to me completely out of the blue. So the actual project itself came together when there's a bloke called Neil Pearson, who you've been chatting to, I think, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Him and Adam and Caroline Slough, who run a festival called Folk by the Oak.
Mm-hmm.
They were at a festival and they saw a performance of an amazing composer, singer, she does everything, Kerry Andrew, who was an original member of Spell Songs. Unfortunately, she was in ill health around the time that we were writing, so she didn't tour with us or anything like that, but she's been a really, really big part of it. And so yeah, Adam, Caroline and Neil saw Kerry perform a musical adaptation of one of the poems out of The Lost Words, which is the book by Robert Macfarlane and Jackie Morris, which Spell Songs is the adaptation of. Yeah, they saw Kerry perform. I'm not sure which poem it was, and then they obviously saw potential to make this into a full project, a full album of the book of poems. And so I already knew Neil. I'm not really sure how I knew him. I think I just knew him from the sort of folk circuit. And he just emailed me one day and just said, "Do you fancy being in this project?" And he didn't tell me what it was. He just said, "It's called Spell Songs. It's based upon this book of poems, which I hadn't yet read." And I said, "Okay, well, who's in it?" And he sent me the list of names, and they're all people that I listened to growing up and greatly admired. And so obviously I said yeah straight away. But really it came completely out of the blue. I wasn't expecting it. I didn't know of the project. Just popped up in my inbox.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, because the Lost Words is the book, and then you guys take the poems in the song and create poems and create them into songs. Correct.
Yeah,
that's kind of how it works. And then so the person that wrote the Lost Words is the one that kind of put this together, or it just kind of all fell into place when they saw Karen sing, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I think maybe Rob, who wrote the poems. I don't know if Jackie saw Kerry play, but I think basically maybe they all were watching at that festival and decided that actually there's huge potential for this to be a musical project.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And then how do you decide on which poems make the records? Do you go in order, or like?
Do you know what? Actually, when we were putting the album together, there wasn't much discussion of who's doing which poem, but somehow serendipitously no one chose the same one, and we all just happened to choose ones that we were drawn to. Not really sure how that happened, but that's kind of one of the nice things about it. So
for your songs on the record, you just chose what you'd want to do, and then you come up with your own. Do you do everything on the song that you choose, or on the poem that you choose, or how does that work?
Well, it's been different for each album, because we've just done the second album. So the first album was composed mostly in a residency, which we had together for a week, where we all just stayed in this big, beautiful house and hung out and wrote songs. A few of us maybe came with some ideas, shreds of material. But really we wrote the first album. It was collaborative in terms of how the material came about. Whereas the second album, we had a little more warning that we were going to be writing it. And also there was the lockdown of last winter. So we knew that the writing session was going to be in spring, and then we were all locked down. So it gave us a little bit more time to write the material ourselves in isolation. So with the second album, a lot of the material was already written, and we used the residency more to arrange it. Whereas the first one was more collaborative in the way that it was composed, I'd say.
Okay. So you chose because everyone was, obviously locked up inside. You found the poem that you wanted to do, or how many songs do you have on the record?
Well, I've sort of got one that I sing the lead on.
Right.
But everyone plays on all of the tracks. It's very much like a band, really. So,
but you got but the one you chose to sing on was kind of the song that you were working on during the lockdown.
Yeah, that's right. We had a little Dropbox folder going as well. So, if any of us had come up with just little scraps of ideas, or even a fully formed chorus or something, we'd put that in the Dropbox, and then we could all listen to it and kind of see what everyone's vibe was with each poem or each track.
Very cool. Well, what track did you do? I'm just so the listeners know, and I want to know why you chose that poem.
So I did, on the new album, I did Swallow. So one of the poems about the swallow, which I think at the time, because it was like January and it's a bit dark and miserable and we were all locked down, I was feeling pretty sorry for myself. And I read the swallow poem, and it sort of reminded me of when the swallow comes back over here, which is sort of around the start of summer, and sort of longer days, warmer nights and stuff like that. So I kind of ended up, I don't know, I just gravitated towards that poem really and turned it into a song.
Wow. And how many times would you say you have read the Lost Words?
I probably, do you know what? I'm not sure. I sort of dip in and out of it rather than going from
from poem to poem.
Yeah, it's quite nice to just dip in and out of, or open on any given page and just read the spell or read the poem that's there in front of you.
And then if one resonates, that's when you're like, okay, do you jot it down? Like, okay, Swallows like one maybe I'll do as a song. Like,
Yeah.
how do you guys move forward with that?
Well, that was more in the residency, so once we brought our ideas, we'd present it to the rest of the group, and then maybe see how we could build it as a band. So with Swallow, it's quite sort of ballady and piano led, so it was more that everyone else can add textures on top of it or add harmonies, or Beth's cello, for instance. Whereas some of the tracks, some of the ones that Chris Drever, who plays guitar and sings, the ones that he wrote, I suppose maybe would play them through and you think, well, could add some drums to this, or maybe it should be this kind of vibe. Or so a lot of the collaboration came from just sitting down, listening to each other's ideas together, and then shaping them collaboratively, or like in some cases kind of wrestling with them to make them into a specific vibe or something that wasn't yet covered on the album in terms of tempo or whatever. So
okay.
Yeah.
So when you're all picking the songs or poems, like, so you have, you know, this 10 or whatever songs in the poem, then you have to kind of write to arrange them into like a cohesive piece so it makes like sense on the record. Like, I would imagine that's kind of part of it, right? Like, okay, will this song work? Are we going to be able to build around the poem to make it land within the full body of work? Or like, how do you guys navigate that?
It depends really on which track it was. So for instance, Moth, that came out today, with the video, Karine initially just came up with basically a 4-bar loop, and it was just her sort of playing guitar and then a short verse, which I think is actually the opening verse of the song, which was the only verse that she sent. And then she put that in the Dropbox, and then I think upon listening to that, it was like, okay, I understand what that vibe is going to be. And then from that, when we all got together in the sort of writing residency, we built it into, it's kind of not really a song structure. It's almost like a soundscape, and it builds, and then eventually it dies away again. And that was one that's more just vibe rather than a fully formed song.
I see. Yeah. That is awesome. And with this project, I mean, with having this book of poems, how are you going to eventually put the whole book together into a record? Like, what is the plan? Or are you just kind of going forward as you guys are?
I think for the time being, we're just going forward as we are.
Okay.
I mean, so far, there's no plan for a third record that I'm aware of, or indeed like a joint, like almost making it into a double album. Not as far as I'm aware, but I mean, watch this space. You never know.
Okay. And when you guys do a live set, do you play? I mean, obviously, I would think you'd play from both records, right? And
yeah, I mean, we're actually off on tour this week.
Oh wow!
So the last time I was on Zoom was as we were discussing the set list. So yeah, it's going to be largely the new album, but also I think some favorites from the old album will feature as well.
That's amazing. So with this tour coming up, have you had a chance to play live recently enough, or like when was the last time you guys have played together?
We've not played together for quite some time. I think the last gig we did together was we did a live streamed. Oh no, it wasn't. It was Shrewsbury Folk Festival in summer. That's when it was.
Okay.
So not that long ago. That was
Sure.
August. But yeah, so tomorrow we're off up to Glasgow. We've got a couple of days to rehearse the tracks up. Yeah, no one's heard the live versions of the new album yet, so it's going to be exciting to build them and try and get them as faithful to the record as possible. And
that's awesome. So you guys haven't played the songs yet together as a full band?
Well, we played them in the residency when we were writing them,
but not in front of a crowd.
We haven't yet sort of finessed them into
it
band versions of the songs. So that's what we'll be doing over the next few days
and preparing for the tour. I love it.
Yeah. And then it's only a short tour. We're just going starts off in Glasgow. Then we're going to Perth. So exciting to do some Scottish dates finally, because obviously 4 of the band members are from Scotland.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
And then we're playing in Newcastle, well, Gateshead technically, which is in the northeast, and then Birmingham, and then 2 nights in London.
Wow, that's huge. That's going to be I'm sure you're super excited for that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jim, for hanging out with me today. I appreciate it.
Nice one. Nice to chat to you.
Yeah, I do have one more question. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Yeah, actually, I think if I was an aspiring artist right now, I think there's a lot of stuff at the moment because of social media, and it's very easy to be swept up into this social media centric thing of being a content creator. And I think, especially with the advent of TikTok and stuff like that, and if you're an aspiring artist, it's easy to fall into that. And I think my advice would be, like, don't worry about all that stuff. If you're a musician or if you're a songwriter, create and write and play at your own pace, and don't put pressure on yourself to churn out content, because all that stuff will follow. That's what I would say.